Okay.
That's okay.
Have you been able to change the,
I know.
that I'm sharing this
Yeah.
with?
A bottle now. Forget.
Cases have been changed
And
the definition of
let's change it to like,
Ernie's. Yeah, I was thinking, why are you so hard?
but then I was like, no, love you
Because of
can
he has diabetes
It would have worked like
and
2
but
years.
it's healthy. Right. But still, I would say things
But yeah,
like,
get to look
well,
forward to that.
why
Oh
don't
wait, I
we
had this
say
open
that?
already.
some of mine
A
are.
lot of
I'm
people
rid of one of them.
to go to farmers market on big Saturday.
Oh, you have
And
to
then I
like
thought-
not interact at all.
That's what I've been trying to do.
No, I went
I've been
Thursday.
dropping trash off. I took all
It was,
his
it wasn't
furnishings
really very
and sold
crowded.
them.
It was easy to stay apart.
And so now
It'll
trash
take a while for people to get comfortable again.
and snacking with a net.
I think it worked. No, I usually don't. That works.
Well, I started this new attack. For me,
I don't know about that.
That's really. What is it?
Simon, he's a monkey. Terrible
Except for farmers
spelling.
market. Handle it.
Was Chef's body there? Because
What is
They
that?
just make monkeys in the old Nintendo.
Do you know I got that lasagna once and didn't like
so
it?
if I get text, I guarantee
But I'm not a big pasta eater.
It's so terrible. I wish my mom would never. That'd be
Something about pasta.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the regular council work session of the city of Sierra Vista for May 28th, 2020. Okay, session to order. And we have a number of presentation and discussion items. We'll start with item 2A, the May 28th council meeting agenda. Obviously, we'll do a call to order, roll call, invocation, pledge of allegiance, acceptance of the agenda, already standard. City manager report. Item number 2 is the consent agenda. 2 items on the consent agenda, the approval of the city council special meeting minute of May 12, 2020. Are there any additions, deletions, corrections for that item? Seeing none, item 2.2 is the regular minutes for the May 14th, 2020 council meeting. Again, any additions, completions, or corrections? Comments on that? None, we'll move to item 3. Item 3 is the request for a conditional use permit for the Haven Health in Sierra Vista. Mr. Regler, may we have a staff report, please? This is a public hearing item.
Correct. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The city did receive a request from Haven Health of Sierra Vista to expand their nursing services on their property located at 660 South Coronado Drive. And I do have a map here. It is located at the northwest corner of Busby and Coronado. Okay.
We heard it too.
Pay attention to this.
That's right, okay. So the expansion of their building includes constructing a 10,000 square foot addition to the existing facility, which will include 40 additional beds. Overall, the number of beds on the property will be 131. Now, the property is currently zoned multifamily residence. Let's to work here. Okay. Well, it's currently zoned multifamily residence. So according to the development code, a nursing facility is required to obtain a use permit if located within an MFR zoning district. Now, the nursing care facility, as you well know, is existing, and it is defined as a legal nonconforming use. However, once the nonconforming use is enlarged or increased, as is the case in this situation, the legal nonconforming status is lost, and then the use at that point needs to conform to the requirements of the current development code. Hence the reason for the conditional use permit. Staff analyzed the expansion of the proposed use to determine if it was appropriate for the site and came up with the following findings. Looking at the suitability of the site has been in continuous use as a nursing care facility since 1982. Therefore, the use is well established and the site is designed to meet the needs of a care facility. In analyzing the The parking calculation for nursing care facilities is 1 space per 3 beds and 1 space per 2 non-resident employees. So there will be 66 total employees on shift, and as stated, there will be 131 beds, which combined requires a minimum of 77 parking spaces. The applicant will be providing a total of 81 spaces on the site, therefore meeting the parking requirements. In terms of traffic generation, Coronado is designated as a minor arterial, which is designed to handle 10,000 to 20,000 vehicles per day. Based on the latest traffic counts, there is approximately 7,900 vehicles on Coronado Drive between Wilcox and Busby Drive, and approximately 6,900 vehicles between Golf Links and Busby. So as you can see, the roadway is not close to capacity. Now, Haven Health has provided staff with proposed traffic generation of the 40 additional beds. According to the analysis, they estimate that each patient typically averages 2 to 3 visits per week. So with the addition of 40 beds, the increased traffic would be between 11 and 17 cars per day. So as you can see, the roadway will have ample capacity to handle the minimal increase in traffic. In terms of access, there are currently 3 access points into the site, 2 from Coronado, 1 from Busby Drive. The accesses will allow for appropriate traffic flow entering and exiting the site. And of course, staff will be reviewing the accesses during the site plan review process, which will be required to be submitted following this conditional use permit. Mr. Mayor.
And that includes access for emergency type vehicles, i.e. ambulances?
That is correct. That is correct. In terms of compatibility with surrounding uses, Bonita Vista Apartments are directly to the north. Bella Vista Apartments are directly west of the Haven Health facility. So both uses are more intensive and will generate more traffic than the facility. So therefore, the nursing facility is compatible with the adjacent uses. In terms of consistency with the general plan, the request is consistent with the general plan, specifically meeting Goal 12-7, increase housing choices that serve all age groups and needs. Public comments, staff notified all property owners within 500 feet of the property. In addition, a newspaper ad was in the newspaper and a sign was posted on the property. Staff received 1 verbal comment from an individual named Angelica Thomas, who had concerns about the increase in traffic generated by the Haven Health addition and an increase in the speeding on Coronado Drive. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item on May 19th and unanimously approved the request by a vote of 6-0. So this does conclude staff's report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Pregler. Questions from Mr. Pregler on his report?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I didn't see on their timeline for the construction. Is there kind of timeline established yet, or is it kind of far out?
Right. So Haven Health is to submit their site plan for Phase 1. Phase 1 being the 10,000 square foot addition. Once site plan is approved, then they would proceed with the Phase 1 addition. Phase 2 has to do with facility improvements or make improvements to the parking. That's going to be the Phase 2 of the improvements to this site. Phase 1 would be the addition to 10,000 square foot addition. That addition will that Phase 1 will include landscape, an additional parking improvement that'll be site plan review when it is submitted.
And normally a site plan takes how long? You have major complications.
I would say it would take anywhere from 2 to 3 months based on the quality of the submittal. Site plans are approved by the Development Review Committee, which is the final formal authority of
Follow up is, I guess my initial thought was, like, there's discussion, and I apologize that I don't know where the discussions have gone at the state level on increasing, like, state regulation and nursing home protections and these kinds of facilities, protections of the residents, and just making sure as they go through construction that we're able to take all of those new regulations and existing, like, for COVID purposes, into account to protect the residents.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. And in fact, the Planning and Zoning Commission, a representative from Haven Health mentioned that they had to be in compliance with all state laws and regulations regarding COVID and any other regulations they may have to meet. And they could talk more about that at the meeting on Thursday when the representative is here.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious, Jeff, if there'll be any disruption of traffic on
those two streets, Coronado and Busby,
During construction.
during construction.
Construction, well, most construction will be on site. There shouldn't be too much construction on the public roadway. You have to improve the accesses, the driveways. There might be some minor disruption, but there shouldn't be any major disruption we typically see for a subdivision of that sort.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Mr. Pregler? Thank you, Mr. Pregler.
Okay, thank you.
We now move on to new business, item number, which is accepting a grant for federal aviation. Mrs. Sar, Mr. Hare. He does look a little different. Sure.
SAR is taking 2-week vacation as a 1-day vacation. It happens to be today, so she will be here for the presentation. I'm here today. Mr. Chair and member of council, this agenda item accept a grant from the Federal Aviation Administration in the amount of $100,204 for the design and rehabilitation work at the airport. Work is outlined. Oh, it's okay. The work is outlined on the overhead. Design will determine the most appropriate repair method for each area given the pavement condition and use characteristics. However, the apron is expected to require some amount of reconstruction, whereas it will likely only need a seal coat.
Hey, for aviation people, can you point out the difference between apron and the taxiway?
The apron is this trapezoidal area here that is access to approach. The pilots use that to get their aircraft to their hangar. The taxiway is actually the equivalent of a street at the airport, where there would be air traffic actually operating on the taxiway. The taxiway is constructed to different standards and therefore is held up much better. So it requires a seal coat to eliminate some of the degradation of the surface. At the we have to be careful with what's called FOD, foreign object debris, and that can be kicked up by gravel that is not sealed in. When the propellers go through, they can damage. So we want to make sure that ways and aprons are sealed well. Design is expected to be complete in the current calendar year, and construction will be programmed into the following year. It is anticipated that construction will qualify for a grant as well. The design grant will be 100% federally funded with no required state or local match. Airport grants typically require a 4.5% match from the municipality and an equal 4.5% from the state. However, due to the CARES Act, all 2020 grants are 100% federally funded with no match required. If there's any additional questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. On this first, really exciting. This has been a topic of discussion at the Airport Commission for a long time. The need for the improvement to the apron has been heavily discussed on topic. And on the grant, I was just confused by it says in the budget, it says $0 for planning, but the full amount goes toward noise program implementation or development. Like, can you explain like the budget and the grant portion, what that meant?
I cannot. I will say that the grant that we received right now is for the design of the improvements, and there would be a second grant for the construction portion. So this is the design work done.
Okay. So I just was also wondering on that, where was it? Oh, also said that we could bill them for indirect costs and anticipate any indirect costs from this.
For the proposal from,
Could submit reimbursement would be outside, would it be outside the budget for the grant or would it be within it?
well, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the proposal that was presented by the engineering firm, our on-call engineers, did include funds for those types of services, including some unanticipated emergency in there. So I would anticipate that those would be covered under the proposal by the engineer.
And this is my last follow-up question. I have two follow-up questions. One is there's a really strict timeline for this grant. And we've had, in a lot of our projects, we've had a lot of COVID-related delays. And I didn't see, even though this is possible by the CARES Act, not see any contingencies on timeline for COVID-related delays. And so just, are we sure, like, we'll be able to meet that timeline? You know, it's said in there they would pull it, the funding, if we didn't meet the timeline.
Mr. Member of the council, the proposal from the engineer is to have a completion date of December 2020. I believe, based on the scope of the project, that's more than ample time to get the design work done and prepare some of the bid specs for construction. It's 7 months to get it done. So I believe the engineer should have no problem getting it completed in that time frame.
This is my last. Are we sure we can get the grant? This does not cover construction. How do we know we'll get the construction grant the following year?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the Sierra Vista Airport allocated funding on a regular basis through the Federal Aviation Administration. So we do get grants. We will have the funding for the project. The question is, will there be additional funding that doesn't require a local match? That would be what we would try to obtain. If we can obtain that, then we will get the funding that's provided to the airport on an annual basis for
This
construction.
might require a local match at that time.
If
There won't be
if
a
we
CARES Act.
if the CARES Act funding is not available or approved, then we have to pay 4.5% of the construction cost.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
Anybody else?
Sorry.
I've been asked to tell those folks that are listening to this program on their phone to mute their phone, please, because it's providing some interference. So if you'd please, at home, mute your phone if you're listening to the meeting on the phone. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Kerr.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to let's see, item number 5. It's a action notice. Mr. Williams. Barbershop's open.
This is home barbershop, so this is still a COVID cut, so which has been live for the last 15 years.
I can understand that.
Right.
Force not.
Mayor, members of the council, this action is being brought before you to authorize the city attorney's office to take legal action against an individual named Joey Silva, and more accurately, to take action against the property that Ms. Silva owns at 140 East Freehage Drive here in Vista. As you are aware, periodically the city is required to go and undertake abatement activities on properties that are overgrown or unkempt or dangerous or dilapidated. This particular property is one of those, and so from 2016 to 2008, the city went and performed certain abatement activities at this particular address, incurring costs in the amount of $4,046.63, which is a little bit larger than most of our abatement costs generally are. Recently, the city also contributed an additional $8,500 to pay some back taxes that we do on the property so as to preserve the city's lien rights in the property. And so now we're in a position where we have enough money contributed to this particular property that makes sense to foreclose our own lien on the property and reimburse the city for the cost it has incurred. Under my contract with the city, under the city's rules and regulations regarding the city attorney's office, I am not authorized to take legal action of this type absent council approval. And so that's the purpose for this item, is to allow the city attorney's office to begin the process of foreclosing our own liens on the property to take ownership and then turn around and sell this property so we can recoup our costs of abatement on this property.
Mr. Tichik, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and Mr. Williams, I assume that you could work some sort of a settlement arrangement as well during this process.
Yes,
And that
yes.
would be the preferred.
Members of council, Mayor, Mr. Kuchek, absolutely. We would be formal type of process, sending a letter to Silva, explaining the city's position, seeking to resolve this before having to file any kind of litigation. We've done this before. Some of you may remember the property over on Garden. It used to be an old funeral home that burned down many years ago. We went through the same process. So we would attempt to resolve this informally prior to filing any action. However, in order to start that process, we need council authorization. Yes, thank you.
And
Mr.
really,
Bishop.
this really kind of puts an extra pre-approved quiver in your arrow in your quiver. There
Arrow
you
in the
go.
quiver.
Arrow in your quiver. I got it backwards. So that you can kill effectively, and you may not have to use the weapon. That's
Correct.
what you're saying. Yes, ma'am.
Members of council, yes.
Mr. Mayor, I have a few questions. My first question is, what exactly did we do on the property for $4,046.63?
So we have cleared out brush, and I'd have to defer to community development, our enforcement officers. I can check on that before Thursday for you. Matt, are you aware of the specific actions?
I didn't realize this item was on the agenda, but I'm recalling that there was a green stagnant pool that we had to avoid, as well as overgrowth and junk litter and debris. And my understanding is the reason why we're taking this action is because absent us settling the back taxes, our lien would have been extinguished. So this is a way to protect those costs that were incurred in connection with those abatements. So really it's to recoup the city's expense in conducting those abatements, either through taking the property or getting the bill paid in full.
Thank you. My next question actually has to do with that as well. Is I don't quite understand why, if we did the activities for $4,046.63, we then paid taxes for almost twice that at $8,541. Quite frankly, that doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. And I understand preserving the lien, but I also understand throwing good money after bad. And if she couldn't pay to do this in the first place, what is our ultimate end goal then? I understand that you just talked about that we're going to settle and hopefully and blah, blah, blah. But it seems to me that if we didn't have you see what I'm saying?
Yes. No, good question. Excellent question. A lot of the properties that we do the work on are either upside down or, well, to use a colloquial term, there's not enough meat on the bone to make it worth our time to pursue our liens. In this case, there is. It's a single-family residence on Freehage Drive that could easily be sold and recoup our costs fairly quickly. And so that's the reason we put this one as opposed to the others that we have where our lien is a few $100s and it just doesn't make any sense financially to this.
But it is not in any way our goal and hopefully not our intention to do that. To get the money back, yes, but not to actually.
We don't want to. Our goal is never really to take over a property and resell it for a profit. No,
No.
Okay.
that's not the purpose of government.
I agree.
No.
Did you have a comment?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Property abandoned? Do they live?
As far as we can tell, nobody lives there currently.
Okay.
It hasn't for several years.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comment is, or to make the assumption that this would not be the first time we've contacted Ms. Silva, that we've been in contact with her over the years.
Yes, Councilmember Calhoun, members of council, mayor. Yes, every time we have performed abatement work on the property, the abatement notice was posted on the property. and sent to Ms. Silva. So she was notified as best we could that these actions were being taken, yes.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions?
I do have one
Yes,
follow-up.
ma'am.
So when you said that we notified her the best we could, have an address on file, certified mail, Leslie
Yes.
Law? Okay.
Yes, so we send notice of certified mail receipt requested to the address that we have on file with the, yes,
Following legal procedures, right?
right.
Have we heard back from her or no
Uh,
response at all?
No, no response at all.
Well, it happens. Okay. Anything else? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We now go on to item number 6. This is the first step in the dissolution and reestablishment of commissions. Ms. Adams.
Mayor Mueller, members of council. During 2019, the mayor undertook what was quite an extensive review of the city board and commission roles as far as council advisory. He came back to council late in 2019. There was a series of work sessions where the actual roles and the missions and whether the commissions needed to be restructured or changed was discussed by council. Commission members were allowed to weigh in on several occasions. At the conclusion of the final work session in this year, the consensus of council was that a makeup of the council commissions would change for a great number of them to have them dissolved and re-established as departmentally assigned commissions, the non-regulatory type of commissions. And the item that will be before you on Thursday seeks to do this and also to direct the city manager to enact an administrative directive to establish those non-regulatory commissions.
I just say this is really the first step. Once this is done, then we already have a draft for the boards and commission handbook that goes through in detail to explain to the commissioners what their roles are based on the previous one, some additions and changes, and will be discussed in the work session in 2 weeks, and on the agenda for
June 11th.
June 11th. The other thing that's not there, as you can read through this, you'll see that we included the youth commission in this action. However, we know that still pending. We have to figure out, especially the situation we're in with the crisis, how to get the youth together to figure out how to do a youth council or a different setup, and that's going to have to be another set of changes and regulations. So that we can do that as well. But so essentially they'll be included in this, but we know that's going to change hopefully in the future. We've just got to figure out how to get it done in this environment. So, any further questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you probably know, probably because I lived with this for a while, I have this sense that commissions must operate with council. And I don't think, or operate with council, I don't know about best. I'm not sure that I or we put enough effort into what could we do to improve the way council interacts with the commissions. There was some sense that I had that we weren't doing enough to work with the commissions. And I don't think if that were the case that we actually did enough. I don't have a huge issue that consensus is to move it to the departments. What I'm concerned about is that we would miss a lot of what, I don't know if they're going to still be called commissions.
Yes, they are.
That we would miss what they're doing and their discussions and whatever. And for instance, the way Sarah just responded to what's going on with, what's happening with the airport grant and all, she had knowledge of what's going on. I think maybe because of your husband, because he was involved and you may have had a lot of conversations. But because you attend those meetings and pay attention, you had knowledge, or she had the knowledge of what's going on with the airport commission. So I'm afraid you'll miss that. And I'm wondering, and maybe this will come in a further discussion, what our connection will continue to be with the commission. I feel like we need to have some connection, knowledge of what they're doing, but I don't know what everybody else is thinking on that. And we always defer to consensus. So,
One of the challenges is going to be, for the example you set, is the Director of Public Works is going to have to be more involved in informing us with what's going on in the commission. Okay. One of the shortfalls I've seen in the past was I'll call Sarah as an exception with the Airport Commission because I think she's done a great job, but in many cases, we don't hear from the Library Commission. We don't hear from the commission. We don't hear from that commission. And that's not anybody's fault but the actual ons. And I think by having the department head or whoever the assigned person is there, I think we're going to get better feedback.
I think that could be true, but I truly believe as council members, never quite, we never understood or gathered the importance of bringing those reports back and knowing what council wanted to know. I sounds like an excuse,
I will
but
to tell you that I think that's been a short whole system was, and hopefully we can improve on that by doing something different.
See, I think it could have been.
That's
I understand. And I don't mean to be argumentative about it, but I think that's the piece we never worked on fixing. We never worked on it, is what I'm trying to get. We talked about it.
Individual council members.
And even as a group, trying to come to an understanding of what is it we really need together. And again, this example today, and off and on, and there were major issues going on. We did hear from council members about what was happening, but that's just my statement. I understand that the consensus happened, made decisions, but what you said will happen, and I think it's really that department, whoever they assign, come back.
Too, this has to be an ongoing process. If this doesn't work, system well, back or maybe a hybrid, but you got to give it a chance. I think you were next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, about 5 under statements and duties, it says to have a clearly written mission statement, which function, et cetera, et cetera. Curious about, and the answer is, what I do think added is we're not saying who to write the mission statement. Is it going to be
when you see the next item, the mission statement that we basically approved previously for each of the commissions is there. So when we talk about that next week, that will be there, and we can discuss that at that time to make sure we got it right for each one of the commission.
I just want to make sure that we put in the document that council, that ones that decide
mission statement.
of
Okay.
the commission. That's all.
Does that conflict with giving the departments
Yes,
over?
I think the same thing.
Because I had the same question.
We
but
set the framework, all we're doing, and we give them the mission, but we also give the department the mission. Let me define that. You guys are overthinking this, but that's okay.
If
I don't see it as a conflict that we give them.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, in the overarching resolution that establishes the policy, I don't see why you can't, direct what the mission is. It could work either way, but I don't see
Well, actually, if you go in this document, there's mission statements and duties, and it basically says a paragraph that you had stated. And actually, the Airport Commission through the Youth Commission, those are all the current statements of the missions that are in the admin document. We've authorized this. We're basically voting on authorizing to sign this document. So we essentially are, in fact, establishing their mission.
I agree, and I have no issue with any of the missions that are listed here. I'm just saying, in the future, should they need to be changed, and hopefully they will be changed as we change and the changes, who is the authorizing body, and I just want to make sure it's in the document. That's all.
Okay. So what you're suggesting then is we add a line, any changes to mission will be authorized, will be directed by council.
Something like that, yeah. Or it could just be, commission should have a clearly written mission statement approved by council, which, something like that.
Okay.
Should they choose to change it, or we choose to change what we want to focus on?
So what you do is you ask them, we put a phrase in the commission should have a clearly written mission statement approved by council, which describes the function the city expects the commission to perform.
Yes.
Okay. Essentially, by us directing Chuck to do this document, we are approving the missions as written.
Correct. I have no issue with any of the missions.
And also the process for change.
And the process for changing. Okay, so we can add that. Ma'am.
And because I shared Gwen's thoughts going through this, and but what made me feel better about it, we're still allowed to attend these commission meetings in their transition period. Maybe we can right. So that's something I plan to do to kind of help that. Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Yes, sir. Also, the way the system works right now, I mean, because they're public meetings, there's minutes, that you get as a result of those meetings, but that's really kind of the only information you get unless the shares that, in the board and commission report, the work session. What we plan to do is one department heads convene these meetings. We will report on those various within your executive report. So every month we will get a report in terms of what happened at that various commission meeting that occurred this month.
Okay.
But last, a lot of stuff is based. Oh,
You're last.
Oh.
man.
I echoed a lot of sentiment that's been said. So I have two things. I was worried about the same thing that Christine brought up with, do we give them admissions? This is going to come from that staff element that's at commission or assigned to the commission. And then the second thing, changing the non-regulatory commissions. Are we going to have change for the regulatory commissions also that highlight the ones of those and what their responsibilities are?
All this action does is change the ones that are not regulatory. The regulatory commissions, we do as before.
They say the same.
But does the document that makes the commission have the commissions in? So we have
No.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure.
If you go back and look, every one of these will be separate, authorized by the commission, happened at a different time, and they were given the missions at the same time. So it was interesting to go through 15 or 17, whatever it was, and try to come up with one document.
Roger. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
Okay. A couple questions. The first, Gwen's point, and then like Chuck, I think, really clarified, was established in this document the official connection. I know that by council administrative directive, but that reporting requirement, making sure that there's put down in paper some kind of this goes to council, like the results of the commission or recommendations go to council or something like that. And you said that it would be put in an executive report.
The current executive report, we would add the section.
Okay, just kind of stating what's going on.
What the meeting was, where, what discussed, what the recommendations.
Okay. So
The feedback loop.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
It's
what you're looking
establishing, some kind of official statement that establishes that feedback loop. We know that will happen and continue to take place.
Okay. Charles? Yeah, there will be minutes.
Yeah,
They don't have.
Don't have to. They're go ahead.
well, it'll be a report. But, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, under the current, conditions, that we have with the, with the liaisons, there's really no authority for the city manager in the current system beyond ensuring that we provide staff support to the various commissions. By moving forward in the direction that you are, the directives flow out of the city manager's office. Obviously, the city manager reports directly to the council. The various departments are still assigned to work with various commissions. So that's the chain of accountability that will exist in there. You're not giving it to the departments. You're actually giving it to the city manager's office. That's how we're going to ensure that the information flows to the council. Then.
Yeah, flows both ways. Okay.
That's-
Jill, one more thing for you. On page 204, operational guidelines, there's one misspelling on the item 7. It would be FOUR instead of FOR. That was thanks to the Mayor Pro Tem. Okay.
Mayor.
Ma'am.
Two things on the mission statements and duties. Not everyone has a defined person, so like cultural diversity as leisure and library services director, community development director, but like Port Commission doesn't state they report to the public works
Public
director,
Works,
or
okay.
that it's the responsibility of the public works director, and then the other one that
What did we miss?
doesn't fully say that.
Youth Commission?
Yeah.
No, Youth Commission's Leisure and Library Services Director and City Manager.
What other one did we miss?
Oh, the one had a question about the Tourism Commission, Marketing and Communications Manager, isn't it? Right?
It's Judy.
Yeah, I know. I thought her title is Communications Director. Isn't it? I just want to make sure, Marketing Communications Manager, I want to make sure we're correct on everyone's titles. Like
Okay.
who's responsible.
We can go back and look at that.
Yeah, and that's the point, that those things be in the
Correct. Okay. So you make corrections, and that'll come back on Thursday. All right. That concludes our meeting on Thursday. So we now go to item B, development fees. The finance minister.
Members of council, at the last meeting, we kind of gave a brief history and overview of the development fees. This is actually one of the first steps in the process of updating the development fees. It did get put on hold given the COVID situation. The ordinance is required for us to do this every 3 to 5 years, so we are on track to meet that requirement right now. Kind of quickly, a redo of the few other items, the overview, the current fees, and then the important parts of what we're going to talk about, land use assumptions and the infrastructure improvement plan, or the IIP as they call it, proposed fees based off of that, and then a fee comparison. We're right now in round 1, use assumptions and infrastructure improvement plan. The detailed report of this with all the meat, which is great for insomnia at night if you're ever really having a problem sleeping, is available on the city's website. It has more mathematical things in there than you'll ever want to try and really dive into and understand, but it is for those who enjoy that type of reading. I don't even like to read that stuff.
Come on, Dave.
Yeah, I'm sure. To review the eligible costs, buildings and equipment like that, yes. Maintenance and repairs are not included. Salaries are not included. You can build excess capacity over the plan into it. And you cannot say if we're missing something we need to have, we're going to bring ourselves up to a level of service and create a new item that we don't have. I can't think anything off the top of my head, but if we want to do a training facility for the police and fire department, we don't currently have one, so we cannot put a development fee on that, for example. We already have to have a level of service, so fire stations, a police station, that is already established at a level of service.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
What if you, because of the development, you want to add a fire station?
Well, if it is, we currently, like for instance, right now, we have 3 fire stations. We know that when we build Tribute and Tribute builds out, we'll need a 4th fire station for that. That is attributable to new growth because we already have those. We already have so many square feet per population and visits to commercial facilities and industrial facilities and all of that fun stuff, which is in that improvement plan. Hence why I say that gets very detailed and very numbers oriented and when it's trying to calculate and show the mathematical calculations for all of that. But that's why I say we have them right now, the level of service. And in fact, as we go into a bit further, we'll see kind of what has happened with the situation we're in right now. Isn't Ms. Humphries?
David, so maintenance, like ongoing costs for that, like on infrastructure and stuff, is that included in level of service?
No, ma'am.
So no, why is it not eligible?
Because now that you're living here, building the facility is, but maintaining the facility, staffing the facility is not. I believe Ms. Gray was here. I know the mayor was here when we were going to build Fire Station 3. We were able to build the station. We could afford to build the station 3 to 4 years before we actually built it. We could not afford to staff it at that time. We had to wait to get revenues and our financial situation in a way where we could add on 18 new firefighters into our 1M costs every year. Because the firefighters would not be, we cannot pay for impact fees for the actual staff to do it.
So,
But
so for
But I mean, you might have been here and not on the council.
I know it seems like I've been here forever.
Well, it would have been, I think Gwen and I were here when it happened. And just a point of clarification, the real answer is because the legislature says that's the way we're going to do it in Arizona. Oh, yeah, those guys. Yeah.
well, that's just because I figure we should be able to, include in some way. I don't know how you would do this. Include the ongoing costs past that life cycle of the road that we're going to have to, pave or whatever.
Well, the thought there, first at the legislature, then the theoretical thought is all these people are now living here, generating sales tax here, and the new sales tax they're generating will pay for maintaining that stuff.
But we know that's not true because we don't. Like in
we
March last year, when Sharon showed us that graph, and we don't have enough money to be where we need to be to keep. So how do we avoid from that getting worse if we're not able to consider the ongoing costs of maintenance?
Discuss it with your legislatures. They're the
Well,
ones
that's,
who.
no, actually,
that's
the answer to that really is we need to look at our tax base and what we're charging for taxes. We have a 1.95 now. When I came on, it was 1.45 for sales tax.
Okay.
So we had to scooch it up a little bit, at least twice, on the sales tax side. And our property tax has gone down, and that's another thanks to the legislature, which I can probably explain. I don't know if I can explain to you. I can tell you about it.
Yeah.
On how we got into that situation, because that part doesn't make a lot of sense to me what they were doing at the time, and that's tied in actually to this whole process.
Mr. Mayor, you make a very good point because we have to be very careful whenever we build a new facility, and especially using the impact fees, because you have two things you have to watch. One is the development going to take place to actually pay for the financed, facility? And a lot of cities in the valley got in a lot of trouble in the 08-09 banking crisis, where they were building facilities, counting on revenue coming in from new construction to pay for those, and all of a sudden that evaporated. So you have to be careful there. And the other is, yes, you are accepting then the responsibility of paying for the personnel and O&M costs that are associated with constructing that new facility. So Dave made a very good example of Fire Station 3. We actually grew, our sales tax to the point where we could absorb additional costs of those firefighters, and O&M of the station when we did that. But, if things are slow, then puts the council in a more uncomfortable situation of looking at having to raise the sales tax to help cover those additional O&M costs. So we try to be very careful when we do these things.
Okay. Sorry, David. I don't want to stop you from your.
They're excellent questions, and as you have already very well experienced, all of you have, we all have, what the legislature does not always pass the common sense test. And I'll leave it at that. The current fee summary, as you can see, is broken down into commercial and residential. Commercial does not pay for park, does not pay a parks development fee. The police, fire, and streets are at 75% of the maximum allowable here. There is the extra half-cent construction sales tax that goes in to make up that difference and gets transferred over every year and is put in the budget process. That has not been done during the current suspension of the fees. That was pushed through and requested by the developers when we first implemented these fees. They wanted to have it done on the construction side. There were various reasons they gave for it. The council agreed to it, took their input, and went ahead and did the 75% across the board for the 3 fees that affect commercial properties only. We've since, as the construction sales tax has changed on what it qualifies, as the law has changed on how you have to account for this differential, these are the reasons that we are recommending to you to eliminate the 25% reduction and eliminate the half-cent sales tax. So when we bring the whole thing to you, there will be a resolution and an ordinance change taking construction sales tax from 2.45% to the 1.95% that is in line with the general retail. It is a state law now that, and ours is currently grandfathered, that will not be much longer, that extra half-cent does not have to completely get put in there. We do have an offset for it. Any differences either stay in the general fund or the general fund has to make it up. Under the new laws that they're putting in, whatever it is, we'll go over, and if there's a shortfall, then there's a shortfall. If there's extra construction sales tax, that would have to get moved over as well in the credit. So that's the history and why we did the 75% of the full allowable. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So a total for, you gave examples of a single family unit would be 3,200.
Yes.
And because I didn't do the math, I'm sorry, and I don't have a calculator right now. What if in a commercial building the same size or an office building, what would that come out to? Because that's by square foot, but I don't know.
Well,
I'm just curious,
yeah.
what's the difference?
Average square foot of a single family unit, which would
I'm trying to think Matt had, I'm trying to think of an office space and Matt has left on. We got.
look at it, if a single family unit is average 1,400 square feet,
Yeah.
a new build, then you would look at an office space at 1,400 square feet times 1.96, and that would give you, I'll do it right now on the calculator.
So on a commercial, just looking at the commercial, with the 4.07, if you had 2,000 square foot commercial property, that'd be $8,000.
Okay. So then where does the mixed use buildings fall in?
Mixed use would be something that would be part industrial with an office included, something like that. You've got a retail space, office space.
So when you
Or a multifamily house.
you would
so it'd
combine
be
these codes?
It would be prorated per the use
Yeah.
square footage.
Okay. The reason, because I know that apartment buildings and mixed use, they will generate more tax revenue. So I don't know why we wouldn't consideration when we're talking about what we're charging as a development fee. And I don't know how complicated that would make things, but
The fundamental basis of it is you have people, and if you have more condensed, like multifamily, you're not looking at the revenue it's bringing in. You're looking at what the impact is of these people on the current services you have. We have 3 fire stations that can service X amount of people. And then you can get a cost per person. So they're saying if you build an apartment complex that's going to have 150 new people come in, well, the cost for the current fire stations is X, just an average. So you say, if I take this cost at the current service level, bring 150 people in, and I've already got the per person cost of what's here, that's all you're looking at as the cost to construct, which again detaches it from the ongoing O&M of I've built this station, I need to maintain the station. Now that they're here, their tax revenue that they're generating pays for the O&M of the state, operations and maintenance of the station and salaries.
right, can't consider all that plus the potential, the expected revenue that's going to come in.
No, because it's based off the service that you have. What is the cost of the service you have?
The impact of the development on the infrastructure that
Right.
we have. So,
But like, no development is equal, and they're going to cost us different liabilities in the future. Why can't we bring that into, why can't we use that as part of when we come up with this, why can't we use that as part of how we figure out what we should ask for an impact fee?
Part of what the impact fee, again, is the state legislature sets down the methodologies that we can use. And there's the 3 methodologies which I'm going to get into. You've got a buy-in, and you've got a projected cost. And there's a third one where you don't use, so I haven't included that one. But the buy-in is where we're at right now in 3 of our funds. We have a fire station and a police station. Fire station 3 and the police station. Because we built based off the growth that was occurring at the time, growth fell off, so we've got excess capacity. We know the cost of those facilities. So the cost of the construction only is what the new homes pay. The additional sales tax revenue and minor property tax revenue we would get would continue to pay for additional maintenance on the buildings and things like that. It's just, here's what the building is, here's the building you need, here's the infrastructure you need. And since you're paying for the infrastructure, not maintenance, not operational expenses, taxes are usually considered paying towards the operational expense of it, not the capital cost of building it. When you do get into this, there is actually an offset included in that report. If we were to issue debt through the MPC or through whatever other means to do it, you do have to take into account the sales tax that they're going to pay that's going to go to pay for the bonds. And the fees would be adjusted if we still have debt outstanding on those, downward to reflect the sales tax revenue that's going in that is pledged to pay that debt service.
Okay.
So in a way, the people's payment of their taxes is also included and a reduction in the fee if you have debt outstanding.
Okay. And this is just what you're allowed to work with.
Yes. As I mentioned, 3 of the 4 development fee funds are being valued based off the buy-in approach. We've built a fire station based off expectations. We built a police station expansion based off expectations, and we built the parks based off expectations. Those 3 funds, when developed, we were out with the public. This is a public process. The developers came in discussions with the council, the consultant, and the developers. They pushed up some of the growth expectations at the time, and then 2008 happened, and development fell off the face of the earth. And so therefore, we did not collect the fees, but the debt service was still outstanding. So the Capital Improvements Fund had the funds available to actually pay the debt service. So now the fees need to be collected to basically pay the Capital Improvements Fund back. They've been borrowing cash. So that's what these three funds use, is the buy-in approach. You're buying into the excess capacity that was created because the development did not occur. So we can go for the next few years basing just buying in off the expectations to do that. So all those three facilities, three functions have all been overbuilt.
I'm sorry, just one more. Could we ever not do the buy-in approach in the future? Like, could we start doing it a different way? Or is that also?
Well, if we get caught up and the fund gets whole, as in the Infrastructure Development Fee Fund, which is currently whole, then have the future approach, which is what that fund is using. And in that fund, we expect in the next 10 years to build a half lane mile of road currently, because of the expected development of the Tribute in that area. That is, it would be on the city to build through the development fees. Key points to the future approach is you do have to have the approved capital improvement plan, which is part of this process. You must start construction on any building or infrastructure or asset that you have mentioned in this program within 10 years. If you do not, you must refund all the impact fees, not to the homeowner, not to the buyer, but to the developer that constructed the housing units.
I remember that from your last presentation, yeah.
So that's a key thing. And you have to be very careful when we do these of in the future approach of what will we realistically be able to build. Now, the fortunate thing is we update these every 3 to 5 years. So we can always change and include something new if we say, hey, this is coming in faster than we thought it would be, or things have changed, we can update it. Like if Tribute to develop quicker for some reason, the marketing campaign for Work at Home here or something like that does, we can, in 3 years, we can update it, add more lane miles to what we would expect to construct, obviously change the fee appropriately. So it is a living, breathing, constantly changing estimate of what we're going to do. But that's where we're looking at with this fund, and in the future, when the other three funds get whole, then they would go to a future-based approach, because you're going to do what do I want to build with these fees.
Okay. Thank you.
That's the ideal way to do it, because
yeah.
right now when you have this happen, and we're fortunate that we're not in the dire straits that a lot of the valley cities were at. So.
Right.
One of the underlying pieces of this is this land use assessment. What the consultant has done is they've looked at the history, they've looked at what they see going on in the community right now, and they've come up with a 10-year growth factor where they expect to be. And now this growth factor takes the actual dollars that are involved with these and calculates the cost for doing it. So they look at what they expect commercial property to add, residential property to add, multifamily to add, all categories of what they expect to go each year, and put it in here. Now this is the draft. If developers come in and discuss with you and you wish to change the assumptions, that's your prerogative to do, and we can update off of that. But off their expertise on what they've seen happen in Sierra Vista over the past few years and what they see going on right now in terms of community development and others, this is their projection. Again, and we update the plan. This projection every 3 to 5 will be updated based off what has happened at that time.
Real quick, the base year actuals, projections also.
The 2019 is the actuals. So what is included in the fire infrastructure improvement plan is the buy-in of the station and Tower 3. Fire 3 and Tower 3, and the tower that's on the fire, they call it Tower 3, it's the ladder truck that's over there. And that's what's left on the outstanding balance, and that's why this is the negative balance in the fund. So based off that and their build out, here's our current estimated fees. I'll have a summary at the end, but you can see the individual ones. For the Parks and Recreation, 3.1, the actual deficit is larger, but in the upcoming budget, we are transferring over about $300,000 from the Capital Improvements Fund to bring the deficit balance to 3.1 million. A large part of this is Sears Center Park when it's first developed. And here's based again, building construction less the cost over the 10 years. The police station's the same thing. The expansion of the police station, including the larger meeting room, the extra stuff that's over there right now, the larger dispatch area, and their breakout. And then streets. Now again, this is the future, the buy-in. Currently looking at over the next 10 years, based off development where it's going to the south and to the east, possibly a half lane mile of roadway, kind of the extension of BST, possibly, with one intersection. And part of this too is where we're at right now. We don't expect to need more than that. Community development didn't think, based off how things are looking, we'd need to need more than that right now. As also you can see, one half lane mile is not inexpensive. As you guys know, building roads is very expensive, especially from scratch. So in 3 years, 5 years, when we look at this again, that may change. If things start moving, you can also up this and add more of a roadway. And remembering a half mile doesn't sound like much, but that is a half section. So it is actually a decent amount of roadway to be building. And again, these. So kind of the improvement summary of the cost involved and proposed schedule. Again, 100%, but lowering sales tax from 2.45 on all construction to 1.95. When we started, this is the full fee. This is not the 75% fee that was put in place. So it was started at $5,000. If we were to have grown it by the construction cost index every year, the current fees you would have would be $7,000. The current fees at 100% are just for $4,000. It's going to be $5,300 for a single-family house, but you do have a savings of over $1,000 on the construction cost for a $325,000 house, which, based off of the information from the East College Center, is the average price of a new house. $300,000 to $350,000 is what he put in his report.
Questions for Mr. Felix? When's the next time we're going to get another talk about this?
We need to update the schedule, and we'll get to a new schedule when it's coming out.
This is going to take some thinking, some digesting, I'm sure, on a lot of people's parts. And I'm sure you're available for questions. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, just real quick, it looks like some of these slides were put together by, and forgive me, teacher
Tischler.
Yes. Thank you. Is it possible that we could have the full report up in the reading room electronically so we could look at that? I'm sure we can do it on paper, but I'm a dork and like to look at it on the computer.
And it should be available.
It should be on the website, and we'll get the thing there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I got the expression. I get it. Okay. Next week. Thanks, David. Appreciate your report. Executive report, Mr. Tuchik.
Thank you, Mayor Mueller, members of the council. Obviously, despite the situation that we're in with the pandemic, busy time of year, the budget books should be out tomorrow, actually, and we're in the process, I know, of working with you to schedule the individual meetings on the budget, so that will be proceeding. As I mentioned before, we did get March sales tax numbers, which had us down about 7%, which isn't a good, certainly was a lot better than I was anticipating. I think we'll see similar, if not worse, numbers probably for April, but I don't see yet an indication that we need to change our revenue projection for sales tax for the fiscal year. That may change if May doesn't turn out well, but I think we'll be able to make any adjustments we need, and I think the community will come out of this okay in terms of how we look at it with our sales tax revenues. So far, I hate to say it's good, but it is better than what I originally thought it was going to be. So let's hope that continues. Last Tuesday, Victoria and I presented a proposal to acquire the Rothery Center property and talked with the school board virtually about that. aware, that is a strategic planning item for the council to pursue that. So was mentioned to them. I think overall the presentation went well, and I believe that the majority of the board very favorably on our offer and proposals. So I believe that will come up again at the school board meeting on June 19th, and hopefully we can get a decision of the board at that time. Obviously, we'll give them any other information that they require, and Ms. Glass also needs to provide some information to the board in order to make that decision. Of course, your strategic plan has already gone through a process, and I believe any questions from the board regarded whether or not they need to go through a process as well on this, and we have offered to assist them using our website as well to collect that public input on that. So we will work with them so that they feel comfortable. But for the most part, I thought the majority of the board was very comfortable with what was presented. So we have that going on, and of course, then last SCOM JP board meeting, we did approve the budget after going through some handling on the new software system needed to operate the dispatch center, and that's included obviously in your budget as well. And I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have once you take a look at those numbers. So those were the primary things we went through. Obviously, you have a section here on the session for COVID, and I will give an update on that at that time. So with that, for any questions you might have.
Okay, any questions for Mr. on this report? Yes, ma'am.
So I just want the executive report is really important for us to kind of really look through, and it's a good, nice summary, and appreciate that. So I had a couple things just on Chuck's recent comments. We've reached out to the new superintendent at all, or do we anticipate or hope that this goes through prior to this new superintendent? I mean, we have like 6 weeks.
Mayor
5
Mueller,
weeks.
Council Member Pacheco, I believe Ms. Glass's contract runs through the end of June 30th. Of course, we've been working primarily with her in terms of our proposal. So I think we're looking at having board approval prior to her leaving. We've not had any discussions with the superintendent at this time.
And just kind of going down, I'm sorry, I always kind of put our chief Thrasher on the spot, but sorry. He loves it. It's his favorite thing. Okay, so we have a huge jump in aggravated assault, but before, and I just wanted to kind of put it out there and refresh on, there's like a new way aggravated assault is classified, and that cannot somewhat attribute the
not all of it, but some of it. If you notice kind of the pattern there, April, June seems to be, for some particular reason, I think as it starts getting summertime, we start a little bit more of those kind of things happen. Some of those, to kind of give you an idea what our aggravated assaults typically are, they're either associated with domestic violence, or they're typically associated with narcotics violence, that kind of stuff. So as an example, if there's a drug grip, there's an aggravated assault with that kind of stuff. So you'll see that spike. That was a significant spike. Some of it has to do with some of the reporting changes during our audit process, but not entirely.
Okay. And then remind me the goal of citizen-initiated calls for service versus officer-initiated calls for service. We're currently at like 60% officer-initiated. Which was your goal, or what's your goal?
Be over 50%.
Over
50%. So the theory is, and it's a theory, and it was one of those things that you wonder whether or not it's true or not, that the more proactive the officers are, the less crime would get reported by the citizens, because they're out there being visible, they're making contact with citizens, they're actually finding the stuff before citizens might be reporting it. The idea is to get the officers out there to be as active as possible, making contact, and that's the idea. Now, our experience has been citizen initiated calls for service and some of our reporting during that time, that the officers are out there more active, but it's going to take some time to actually see if that's if really legitimate in terms of how it happens. I do think there is a correlation, especially when it comes to say, property crime, those type of stuff, that the officers are out close patrols, making contact with people out in the middle of the night, those kind of things. That's the theory behind getting more proactive and having more officer-initiated calls for service than citizen-initiated calls for service.
And then the mental health calls for service was kind of called out as a deeply concerning for the department. And I know there's been a lot of discussions on this issue, but I don't know if, like, there's a way we can bring in a larger discussion on the issue at some point, because it's a serious concern for your department, and that continues to be an issue and a concern, but we haven't seen like traction on.
Right, and there's been a lot of community meetings on this. Of course, with all this stuff going on with COVID, that's all slowed down. Having these type of meetings, I know the Legacy Foundation has held meetings, trying to get all the stakeholders in place. Of significance that you don't see in this report, what our concern with lockdown, we were going to start seeing regarding mental health calls and that kind of stuff. So if you get down mental health as suicidal subject calls for service, typically within a 3-month period, but during the last quarter there was 58. Just in the last month we've been at 51 since the lockdown. So there is a significant health issue that's going on regarding this, regarding the lockdown, that kind of stuff. So I just ran those numbers this morning. Take a look. I know we were responding to a bunch of them. So now we haven't had any completed yet. There's just been people that need help that were able to get that help too. But that has always been a concern, and in particular because of the dangerousness of it and the number of staff hours it requires to handle those calls for service. So we are actively participating with all the groups in town to try to get that addressed, but it is a significant issue that's hard to fix.
Yeah, I know that there's been a lot of community meetings on it, and a lot of discussion. I don't know, I don't know what traction's being gained.
I agree with you. It's hard to these really happen in somebody's home, with family members, that kind of stuff, and getting them the help. I do think that over the years, at least my experience, as a police officer, people are more willing to talk about it. And so we are getting more calls for service because people are calling the police to say they need help before it wasn't really happening that way. So I think there is a little bit of that it's more accepted to talk about these issues and accept that help. And people are more willing to call us when they hear that from a friend or a family member than they had been in the past.
Thank you. Keep going. Is that okay?
Oh,
Young lady.
Let's keep going. Okay. So that's all I have for you, Chief. Sorry. And then I just comment on fire and medical. Great job on, swift changes to all your guidelines and your procedures for operating. And I appreciated the update in sharing with us, like, all of your operating procedures that had to change due to COVID, and the swift change in there was really great. And I did want to add in code enforcement, 140 cases in the reporting period, and have some kind of breakdown or just overview of what does that mean? What kind of cases? What are you talking about? Like what are the code enforcement complaints you're getting and that you're kind of going after? Do you have any? Just.
We can give you a breakdown if it's, a weed abatement or public nuisances such as debris. We can certainly break that to you as a
It was just kind of like a you know, I don't know if you can just overview or say what you most likely see. They initiated by complaint, or is it you going out and you see it?
Well, it is mainly complaint based, although we have done some proactive enforcement in recent months. Obviously, during the monsoons, weed abatement is the biggest cause for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Pacheco, we can easily break down, much like the police department does, what's complaint initiated or staff initiated, and also we could break down further the nature of the calls in the report in the future, so that wouldn't be hard for us to do.
Okay. I guess my thought on that is just that, like, when we have a code recommendation come forward to us from and see that, it'd be nice to know. Well, we've seen a lot of complaints over the past years or something. Over the past months, we've seen a lot of complaints about that. It makes sense. We're now responding by adjusting the development code or adjusting the city's code.
Sure.
Because people talk about it or complain about it all the time. So making that connection for me would be helpful.
I really like that suggestion.
Yeah, that's and I think that's all I had on. And then the last was just a question, but I know it's not here. Was the bar screen already slated for replacement, or was it due to COVID? We know.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Pacheco, I don't know if it was already slated, but I know that it was in the process of being replaced before the pandemic happened.
Okay. That was my question. It's like all the people flushing not toilet paper destroyed the bar screen. That's
Tough to do.
That's kind of what it kind of leads to that a little bit in the wording. Like maybe all these people using like paper towels and baby wipes and stuff. Anyways, so don't go down that road. Sorry.
No, that certainly was an issue, though.
Was an issue. Like we worried about it and like glad that they did the Flush Smart campaign and all of that. Didn't know if that actually, now we have to replace the bar screen because people didn't know how to flush properly or whatever. Sorry. Anyways.
Okay. What's interesting about comment there is that those baby wipe things, they're killers, I understand, for the sewer system. And, that could be a serious issue. But
I
anyway.
just wondered if it really was due that. But then I want to give kudos on the the Hummingbirds of Hope campaign communications. I'm like going down. It was really perfect timing for that campaign, Judy, and that it was well received. I think you sell yourself short a little bit, of just showing the comments or positive comments on the pages, but it was shared and shared and shared and shared, and then other groups did like spin-off campaigns, like art contest based on it on Hummingbirds of Hope. I think the timing of it was good. I saw good feedback on social media. I just want to pass congratulations on it. So that's all I got on that. Sorry.
Ready for everybody else?
Hey, you guys talk like
Yeah, just a second.
talking.
Yeah, I appreciate all your input on that. I had all the same comments to make, but no, not really.
Sorry.
I did have a question about composting facility. Were you able to pull up anything on that happening out there? It says tenant improvement. Did you have time?
I didn't get a chance, Ms. Calhoun, but I think Richard's still here.
Oh.
What was the improvement at the compost facility that we have a permit out for right now? We'll find out and let you know.
I'm just curious. I was telling you, I've been bemoaning the loss of recycling, and then I saw that about composting, and I thought, oh no. Anyway, whenever. There's no biggie. We can look into that. That was all I had. Just curious about composting. Oh, and we a little bit about. I appreciated seeing the change in the electric use, but understand, and I appreciate you put it in there. It doesn't represent the way it's going to look forever. So, and you plan to update us regularly on,
Related.
yeah. Oh, so there's always a silver lining, huh? But we'll get updated later on, probably closer to the end of the year, on how we're doing. And I do also appreciate the executive report. It's very handy. And it's also a good place to refer citizens about specific issues. So thank you.
Anybody else?
Oh, I know Laura got the new bus, or you got the app for it. You had the bus, and it looks very nice. And I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, somebody in house designed it. It's lovely. Good job.
Also on this item? Okay. We'll now move from executive report to the report on trips, recent trips, meetings, and future meetings. I had the honor and privilege of meeting with the governor with a bunch of other supervisors and mayors on Thursday. Drove up to the 8th floor in the Capitol and an hour with him. And the main focus of my pitch was, where's our money and why don't we have it? Okay. And I was next to last to speak in the order when they went around the table. He realized that now he needs to make sure that we get our money. He said he would make an announcement this week, and we told him Monday couldn't be soon enough. We had legitimate COVID-related costs that were budgeted that we need to take care of, and also with most people share with him is we're probably not going to have to spend all the money that may be allocated to us. We talked how it should be allocated based on population, but in the case of the counties, they may need to get extra because they act as our health departments for those smaller towns, cities, and towns. So they may need to get an extra percentage or two to cover. So he will take all that into consideration and make his announcement hopefully tomorrow or the next day in a televised meeting in Phoenix. So it was kind of the point of the discussion with just about everybody else, kind of give them a status report where they were and what they needed to deal with the crisis, and that was pretty much the conversation. I did talk a little bit about how we need to work with CA to get a more involved rural development, not the two big cities and the two big counties. And basically he said, well, that sounds like a great discussion for a future time. So he's a good politician, as we know. Okay. Anybody else have any recent trips, meetings, future meetings?
I just want to comment, I'm really glad you brought up the issue of the AC in rural communities. It's shameful sometimes reading through some of the documentation about how little effort seems to be. I'm only from what it looks like.
Well, we need a different kind. We needed a different help, and that was my point. And I gave you examples, but we need a little different type of help, a little different focus than the big cities, and especially if we're going to attract people that are going to telecommute, and they're looking for a good place to live and be able to telecommute quality of life. Probably not in Mesa or Phoenix or Marina or whatever.
Just
probably other locations.
I was really surprised in reading that a small business is up to 500 people.
Yeah.
And I should have picked that up in some of the other stuff that came out earlier, but it's hit home sometime over the last week. But is there any way, and I know we do things a little differently. We change our numbers, and I would like to see that continue. That as a community, somehow we're able to communicate to people that a small business. We have so many small businesses here
Really,
that we need more emphasis.
The definition of a small business is not our definition of a small business. That's for sure.
So is there?
Well, that's why we need to spend more time with the ACA and others. And I gave them some specific examples, like being able to have the funds to develop 10, 40 acre areas that have access to all the utilities that we actually attract a business in, and the fact that they're not going to help these communities in greater Arizona that have the educational and technical ability to do that. So it's got to be an ongoing campaign, and it's not going to happen tomorrow. We just got to keep the pressure up.
That's the piece. It's keeping the conversation open for
Yep.
that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Else?
In room.
No future discussion items on the council and council requests. We will have hopefully the last piece of the organization of commission with the commission handbook for discussion next week. Mentioned that already. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
I'll just share with you, and this is, well, two things, sorry, to share. I always have more things. So I did reach out to a couple of different cities that representatives that I've met through going to some of the conferences that we go to, and I received this week and haven't had the chance to sit down with and talk about it, but from Casa Grande, their commission outline and how it functions, how it's put together, and they have a very successful commission, and then the town of Wickenburg as well. So I reached out to both towns. They have great examples of robust youth commissions, and kind of reached out to those representatives on how we could do. And so I'm happy to have that conversation at some point. And another from their conference, this was the transportation related conference last year. We made, I guess, the comment, just a general comment, but made a friendship with a member of the Navajo Nation, and who's a Navajo County supervisor, but also on the tribal council. And through this crisis, this how the whole thing kind of about that we're doing a drive for supplies for them, but he reached out to me about doing that drive, and then we got kind of transpired in us doing a drive for the Navajo Nation later this week. Thank you, Christine. And that came from going to meet with other representatives on council, and that's so just with that relationship building can't be stated. That's all.
And if I may comment too, that I think that's the guy that spoke last meeting with the governor. They are really having a tough time. So if folks out there have the ability to participate, I know Mike goes up to Navajo Nation on a regular basis to help out their charity opportunities to help the folks on the Navajo Nation. They really need help, especially now. Yeah. Okay. When you go to the last item, is Chuck, you want to talk look like future for 19?
All right, Mayor Mueller, members of the council, as of this morning, Cochise County to 62 cases, 42 and 19 active cases. As you're aware, there was a test blitz a couple weeks ago in Sierra Vista, and I'm pleased that no cases came out of Sierra Vista testing blitz. The testing blitz then to Dallas and Wilcox, and we're seeing an increase as a result of the increased amount of testing in the eastern side of significant note, though, is that the number of new cases also included the surgery test. So those people that may have contracted the disease sometime before, but were never tested and since recovered, so that may be inflating the numbers some as well. So certainly 19 active cases doesn't sound as good as the 5 that we had a couple of weeks ago, but there are reasons for that. So that's where we currently stand. As you know, the governor instituted phase 1 of 3-phase reopening program, and as far, I believe the community city has responded pretty well to those guidelines, and we haven't seen any significant enforcement issues that come out of that. Of course, the city then our uses for teams, pickleball activities opened up last year, and I believe that's been done fairly successfully so far. So, and I know they appreciate the ability to get outside and recreate. So that we also opened up some of our lobbies. The city hall will be open now, and we are seeing some come in. That's been done very responsibly as well, not on our part, but on the part of the public that's been coming in. So far, good. We're looking forward to when the governor will announce going into phase 2. I still feel that many of our facilities like the library, OICC, Burger Center, and we're still going to be in discussion on the Cove, probably need to wait for phase 2, which will then provide for larger numbers of people going in. I'm still not comfortable from the public standpoint and the employee standpoint with opening those up to larger numbers of the public. So continue to service the public out of the lobbies, and obviously the drop service for the library. But I do feel we really need to into phase 2 before we start opening those up more to the public, and that's for everybody's benefit. The employees are coming back to work in their facilities at their own pace, so we continue to see that happen. Obviously, some are still more comfortable with teleworking and that kind of thing, and we appreciate that. We're going to let that occur at its own pace as employees feel comfortable. So I think that's very important. We have found out that teleworking, as I mentioned, does seem to work for a number of employees for a variety of reasons. So we're looking at changing our personnel policies to incorporate telework as part of our normal work process in the future. And I think that'll be a thing for everybody involved. So that's where we're at right now. To hear from the governor soon, if there's any further guidance. But I want to commend both public and employees for the way they've responded to this so far. And we'll reopen gradually as conditions allow for. That's all I have tonight. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Fire Chief John, want to add anything? And the police chief, just listening, the police chief has already left, so I won't be calling on him. Any
You can correct me if I said anything wrong.
any questions for Mr. Kuchik? Yes, ma'am.
The fire chief gave me his speaking time, so.
Wasn't authorized to.
I just want to thank for, I believe is a responsible way for handling this reopening, that following guidelines and so on and so forth. And I soapbox for a second. So, in addition to just times being crossover time, where we're moving into a whole new phase of the world, or at least of our country, virus is also opening the door for so many different kinds of ways of business. And I super appreciate what you said about looking at personnel policy and opening the door for some different kinds of ways of doing things. And my personal belief is just that this is a great way to move forward in what looks like a new way of doing things all the way around. And I'm curious and look forward to other conversations about the kinds of ways that municipalities can be doing business that are maybe different from the way they used to be. Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Council Member Calhoun. I think about it a lot in terms of, how to reopen responsibly, and will be addressed in my my message in the vistas that's out. But certainly we have people that want to rush in and open everything up, and certainly we have people that feel more comfortable staying at home. I personally do that still myself for the most part, other than coming to work. So so I understand both viewpoints, and certainly want to be very responsible in terms of how we do that. So we're going to be somewhere between both those viewpoints, but very respectful. We need to be respectful of all those viewpoints. I hope that the community will continue to be respectful of that as well. And I think that's really outside of the and unfortunate fatality that occurred. Probably the biggest issues that will come out of this, and what we'll have to deal with in the future will involve some of the social damage that has occurred as a result of this, and that's something we'll be dealing with for a while.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing nothing else, the council meeting is adjourned. Thank you.